Today's video, I want to compare 3 easy to grow beginner aquarium plants that actually range from really cool red looking plant to a really large plant for big tanks. So let's get into it. What's going on, guys? Justin from H2O Plants, and today we are going over 3 particular plants that are actually in the Hygrophila category of plants. That's kind of like the species or genre of plants, and I have 3 of them here with me today. So first off, this is actually the red one, Araguaia, or Araguaia, maybe, if you want to pronounce it that way. I guess you could do it that way too. Then we have Hygroblue, and we have Willow. So these 3 are all kind of the same similar type of plant, but they're all very, very different from one another. So let's kind of touch on the easier one that I think most people would like in their aquariums, and that's going to be Hygroblue. And the name says blue, but it actually is not blue at all, but it does have on the tippy tops of its leaves, I'll see if I could get a close-up for you here. Let's see if we can get it to focus. You can see there's almost like a red, almost purple tinge to the outer leaf area, right on the edge. And that may be where it gets its name from, but that's about the closest thing to blue that this plant is. Now, Hygrophila as a general species is a super easy plant to grow. In general, it's almost like a weed. Most of these are weeds. You'll find them in water bodies depending on the area. One of the more infamous ones is Hygropolisperma, or Hygrophila polysperma, or Hygrophila polysperma sunset, which is what we have in our basement. We have one of those. They are highly invasive plants, and these are just kind of offshoots of that kind of plant, so they do grow really quickly. So that's what's kind of good about these things, is that if you're looking for a plant that's going to grow quickly, propagate easily, and just really fill in a big area, hygros are the way to go. So Hygroblue here, other than the kind of purplish, reddish around the edges of the leaves, their leaves will get maybe about 5 inches from point to point across, and they grow in segments. So if we can get a focus on one of these, let me just separate that guy. Okay, so you can see here that the leaves kind of grow in sections. So you have 2 leaves that are across from each other, and then the next 2 leaves up top grow across from each other, and they alternate a pattern like that. So that's just kind of how this plant fills in. It doesn't have a bunch of leaves coming in every which way. They're more of a uniform kind of look, and most of them are. There's very few hygro species that don't have a very uniform look. So one thing to note, they are a stem plant, and pretty much across the board with any of these plants, the way you propagate them is what you do is you find where leaves are coming out of, so that's called a node, and then you would want to chop in between one node and another node. So if there's a node down here and a node up here, I'd want to cut in between there. And that's because the bottom of the stem and where the nodes of the leaves are typically where new roots will form when planted. And what will happen is also where a node is that's left, once you cut the top part off and you have a node down here at the bottom, that's where you'll actually see a splitting of 2 new stems forming. And that's how you could get these to be really dense, is just constantly trimming them down and allowing them to offshoot and send out like kind of offshoot stems from the main branch, and that would really fill in. So this one doesn't particularly have any that I can show you right now. Well, maybe it does, a little bit right here. You can see there, this is the leaf, and then down here, there is a new section. It actually kind of looks like those were where flowers were forming, because we recently got this plant in, so it hasn't fully converted to underwater growth, just this tip-top part is. So the bottom part was flowering in the wild, and now or at the nursery, and now they're kind of going to die back underwater. But Hygroblue is an ideal plant from anywhere between a 10-gallon all the way up to a 40, 55, even a 75-gallon. You could fit this plant in rather easily and do just fine. It would be perfectly suitable for any background. Mid-ground, I wouldn't recommend. It's going to be a little too big unless you really keep it short and compact. But you'd have to constantly trim it because this plant will grow rather quickly. So just keep that in mind if you're going to use it as a mid-ground plant anywhere. Maybe in a bigger aquarium, maybe like a 150 or 200 or something like that, you could use this as a mid-ground because it's going to be, you know, kind of, it's a big footprint, so this would look nice there. But anything under like a 75 or lower, you would want it as a background plant. Now let's go to the next easier one, which I would say is this one, Willow. And you can see here it is substantially bigger than the Hygroblue. So Hygroblue is, in comparison to this, And keep in mind, we got these in the same exact week, so they are going through the same exact transitional period, and therefore, you know, they're about at the normal size as they would be in the wild. So you can see this guy grows much taller, has much bigger leaves. Its leaf is about probably 5 inches across, maybe 6 inches, just one leaf. So that's a total span of almost maybe 12 inches or so. Now, that is about the full span of just one stem of Hygro Blue. So this leaf makes up for the whole span of the Hygro Blue plant. And that just goes to show the massive kind of height and size that this plant gets. So this plant, ideally, for anything more than a 75-gallon or up. But that's not to say that you couldn't use it in a smaller aquarium. It's just, in my personal preference, I wouldn't put it in anything smaller than a 75. But you could have an idea for it. Maybe you want it as a foreground plant. You're just going to trim it every day or every couple of days or whatever and keep it short. You could do that. Hey, I'm not one to tell you what you could do with your own aquarium. But very similar to the Hygro Blue, it's a stem plant. Like so, if you wanted to propagate it out, you would cut the stem and replant the top. And you could keep the bottom. And you can actually see more clearly on this one, right there in the center, is 2 new offshoots forming because these leaves are going to die back now that they're being submerged, and 2 new offshoots are going to pop up. So the plant is going to be more full. One thing to note, this is a light green leaf pattern where Hygro Blue is a darker green pattern with that kind of splash of like a dark purple almost. So they are very different. The stem on this is kind of like a reddish tan color. The stem on this is a dark green color. So 2 different color kind of combinations. The red stem is really nice. It looks really cool. Most people will confuse this with like other plants that maybe aren't necessarily for aquariums, but if you ever need to know if it is the true plant, Angstifolia, I think is how you pronounce this. Let me just take a little side note here, is I got reamed on my last video for not pronouncing crypt Wendiae correctly, and I probably still butchered it, but I apologize. I was kind of tired that day that I filmed that, so my pronunciation was off. And sometimes I'm not going to be perfect at pronouncing these, okay? These are scientific names. Who the hell was, naming these things, okay? Not anybody that I know. So, side note over. A little tangent there. But yeah, so, and the one for Hygro Blue, just so you guys will know, is Hygro... are we going to focus there? What is this? Salicifia? No. Salicifiolia. I don't know. Listen, I didn't make these names up. I go by the common names. I like the common names, make it easy. And yeah, so these 2 aside, these are really easy to grow plants just in general. And I wanted to showcase another one that is very similar, and that's this Hygro Araguaia here. Now, this one is shedding a lot of its leaves. Oop, stem is starting to bend there. Let's not bend that. So these are a very woody type stem. They're almost a brown. So one thing to keep in mind if you were to get this plant in is even though the stems are brown, typically that's a bad sign, but for this particular plant, that's just naturally how they are. They are solid, they are firm, you can see that they're firm. But this plant actually gets red at the leaves once grown submerged. Above the water, they're completely green. There is no red in them grown submerged, but you can see there the red in its leaves. Now I have this plant in one of the tanks downstairs that we actually did an aquascape in. I'll link it up above if you want to check out that video. It's on the dry start method, really easy dry start method to grow plants in. But this plant is in there and it is fully red. It's very nice. Its leaves are very spread out and they don't get very large. You could see here the largest that they're going to get is about this. So maybe about a 4 to 6 inch total spread, but they're a lot more narrow and tinier than the Hygro Blue is. So a couple of things to note about this plant. It's red, like I mentioned. Red leaves, very nice, easy to grow red plant. Now, here's where it differs from most Hygros. This is a slow growing plant. This plant could probably go in, I have it in the 60U tank downstairs, I think it is, and that is, I want to say about 20 inches tall. This plant has been in there, I haven't trimmed it probably in over 6 months, and it's only a couple inches tall. So the one thing to note about this plant, once it's submerged, it grows super slowly. Once it emerges though, if you ever get it to grow above the water, it grows super fast, but underwater it grows super slow. So in that case, if you're looking for like a smaller growing red plant that you could keep short, you can go with this guy because you're not gonna have to trim it a whole lot. And when you do, you just replant and then it'll get branchier and branchier and it'll keep kind of setting off offshoots and it'll look really full. So that's the nice thing about Hygro Araguaia, and I definitely recommend this. This does not really need CO2, doesn't need a whole lot of light. It's a very easy to grow red plant, but the thing with the plant is, like I said, it grows slow. So when you submerge it, it's going to lose all of its green leaves. It happens all the time. All of its green leaves are going to go. You're going to have bare stems. They're almost going to look like the bottoms here, almost completely bare. You see that? It's going to look like a little twig just sitting there. But if you give it enough time, it'll start producing its red leaves. All the kind of nodes all the way down will start shooting off side shoots, and you'll have more and more stems to grow. So that's just one thing. This plant requires a whole lot of patience. It's not something that you can plant and like, oh, you're going to see immediate results with, but it is easy to grow. It's just a matter of having those patience. So patience with this plant, they really should have called it Hygrophila patience, because it's a slow grower. It honestly is. It shocked me on how slow it grew, knowing that it's a hygro species. Once I started growing it in the tank that I have it in, I was amazed by it. But it's a very beautiful plant. I definitely recommend it if you're looking for a red, easy to grow plant. Put it in your aquarium, and there you go. Now, like most beginner plants, all three of these guys, they don't care about pH levels. Anywhere between 6.5 and 7.5 is ideal for these guys, but you could push it to 6 and 8. Temperatures, they prefer warmer temperatures, so 74 and up, but with that said, I do keep these guys in about 65 degrees. They're in a tank that doesn't have a heater, so they are fine in there, and they've been growing just fine. So they're about 65 to 70 degrees downstairs in a basement. They aren't finicky when it comes to anything else, but they are really good root feeders. As you can see, actually, Hygro Willow, that is really good roots there, so keep that in mind. Good substrate, or good root tabs, like our root tabs that we sell on the website, the Vital tabs, definitely recommended for these guys. But that's really it for the Hygros, guys. There are a couple more that I have that I want to do videos on, and I will do more videos on in the future, but these are the three that I get the most of and that I feel would do really good for beginners and just people that wanted to see the difference between them, because they are all very similar, but they're all very different as well. But guys, that's really it for this video. Let me know down in the comments below. Do you like Hygros? Do you have any? Which ones do you have? And maybe other ones that I didn't mention here today. If you enjoyed the video and you learned anything, make sure you leave a like down below, as well as if you're new here and you want to catch more planted aquarium content or more plant content in general, hit that round button or subscribe down below. If you want to check out a recent video that we did on a Pongeton bovinianus, you could click right there. If you want to check out our video on Crypt Wendii, you could click right there, and I will see you guys next time.